It's 6 o'clock on October 19th. I call to order this meeting of the Cleveland County Commissioners. Madam Clerk, do we have a quorum?
We do have a full quorum.
All right. Is there anyone present that would like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance and the invocation? And let's stand. Salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let's pray. Our gracious Heavenly Father, Lord, we just thank you for this day and all the many blessings you've given to us. We do thank you for the people around the world that work to keep us safe, our law enforcement here and our first responders, Lord. We just pray that you would touch each of them and keep them safe, Lord. And we thank you for the sickness that is getting better in our community, it seems, Lord. And as we go into the business meeting tonight, Lord, we just pray that anything said and done would be within your will. We ask in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Okay, and I see a couple of elected officials. If you would please stand and tell us who you are.
Cleveland County School Board.
Thank you for being here.
Betsy Harnett, Register of Deeds.
Thank you, Betsy. Any veterans present, would you stand and be recognized?
Sonny, that's the U.S. Army.
Thank you for your service, John. Any law enforcement?
Danny Howe, Cleveland County Sheriff's Office.
Thank you, Danny. And I see some department heads. Would you stand and recognize yourself? Appreciate you being here tonight.
Carrie Melton, Assistant County Manager. Sherry Lavender, Tax Administration.
Thank you all for being here. Okay, at this time, are there any items that need to be added or changed on the agenda? If not, I'll entertain a motion to either approve or deny the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All right, all in favor? With hands, thank you. Unanimous. Okay, we're moving right along to citizens recognition. Looks like we have one person signed up. Robert Williams, if you would come and tell us your address and tell us what did I miss?
I have to read the thing.
Oh.
You need to tell them what.
Hang
He
on,
knows.
Hang on. The citizen recognition portion of the meeting is an opportunity for persons wishing to appear before the commission to do so. Each presentation will be limited to 3 minutes. The board is interested in hearing citizen concerns, yet speakers should not expect comment, action, or deliberation on subject matter brought up during this segment. Topics requiring further investigation will be referred to the appropriate county agency. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Robert.
Robert Williams, 814 East Stagecoach Trail. That's a Lawndale address, but I live in Falston. 3 things in 3 minutes, so I better speak fast. One, I noticed you've got some legal settlements you're going to vote on later or finalize. You had closed sessions on those things. So I think once you talk about it tonight, then that closed session, the minutes of that closed session become open. And I'd like to see both of them. There's a Klein. I don't know what that's about. There's a Dunn, the guy that got killed in the jail over here. And I hope somewhere to see that window that was cracked and the jailer couldn't see through the window into the cell, I hope it's fixed or has been fixed. Talking about fixing things, school board's talking about spending $35 million on HVAC systems. You can build another high school for that, complete new high school. I don't have much to say about that except I would advise you folks, because you guys are the ones that charge us taxes, and we have to pay taxes. I paid my tax today. And saw a bunch of delinquent things on the bulletin board, names after names, just rows after rows, and maybe we ought to collect some of our delinquent taxes. But The HVAC stuff, I think, needs to be looked at a little bit more. And I hope you guys that's gonna be putting up the money, or some of the money, ought to be looking real close, because I see real problems over there. Anytime, because I know HVAC stuff, I worked in it for 40-some years, and very major stuff. $35 million wouldn't touch some of the things I've worked on before. But I think there's problems there. Anytime you got all of a sudden 4 high schools at the same time, you find out you've got a problem. There's been problems all along. Where's the clock?
Right there, sir.
You got 38 seconds.
I'll give you 30 seconds. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Now we're down to the consent agenda, and I am going to call on Brian Epley, County Manager, to present that to us.
Commissioner Bridges, members of the board, several items for consideration as part of your consent agenda for this evening. Beginning with item A, are minutes from your July 15th regular commissioner meeting, and those minutes are in your packet for review and consideration. Item B and C, both monthly tax reports from tax administration. Item B is your September 2021 collection report. Pleased to report that collections through the end of September total 57.95%, which is a tick over 1% higher than this time last year. Obviously, there's volatility this time of year with escrow and mortgage companies and when they pay. Item C is your monthly abatement and supplement report for September. Abatements for the month total $66,237.61. Supplements total $8,461,210.04. And I would remind the board that that number seems inflated, but that's customary to this time of year. There's several highly regulated industries such as Duke Energy, AT&T, and so forth that are valued by the state. So instead of a true supplement, that's really just their original billing is for the year. Item D is budget amendment number 13 on the year from our Travel and Tourism Department, and a request to budget $4,250. This is a grant we received through a competitive process from the City of Shelby, and it's going to be used to offset existing expenditures for contracted services and events. Item E from Social Services, budget amendment number 14 on the year, request to budget $15,000 in state grant awards from Emergency Food and Shelter Program, and this will be used to help us provide shelter in COVID-19 isolation for low-income people to get them away, whether they're homeless or a client, but to get them in an isolated situation. Item F from the Sheriff's Department, budget amendment number 15 on the year. Members of the Sheriff's Department recently collected ammunition that had been used there and have recycled the brass and collected $2,142. And they'd like to budget those proceeds to do some maintenance out at their practice shooting range. Item G from the Planning Department, this is a request to set a public hearing at your next Board of Commissioner meeting, November the 2nd, 2021, to hear case 21-22, which is a rezoning from heavy industrial to general business at 640 Washburn Switch Road. That's the former Seal Wire building out in front of the new Clearwater plant. Again, that would go to the Planning Board in October. This request is to set a public hearing for November the 2nd. Item H is from request from Cleveland County Schools to declare property surplus. 2 pieces of property. The first is located at 105 East Ridge Street in Kings Mountain, and that is the school that's there. And the second one is a part of a larger parcel behind Grover Elementary that includes a residential unit. I think there's going to be about 7.5 acres that are surveyed out. County staff have evaluated both pieces of property, and as you're aware, NCGS 115C gives a first right of refusal to the county commissioners. The recommendation from staff is that the county has no need in those properties. Again, I would remind you, it's not an approval to sell or not to sell, simply to evaluate whether the county has any asset purpose there or not. And again, the recommendation from staff is to allow the schools to declare that surplus, declining the opportunity to purchase, and they can move forward with their process. Item I is a report from the legal department of 2 dispute resolutions that have recently concluded. The details are in your packets as to the specifics of the amount and the parties, but for review, consideration, and approval this evening. Item J is from our legal department as well, and this is consideration to sell county-owned property. These are parcels 10462 and 10490. At your previous commissioner meeting, we presented these as part of the regular agenda item. Both parcels were acquired some time back for industrial purposes through our due diligence process of conceptual site development and utility mapping and grading. It became clear to staff that the property really was not suitable, highest and best use for industrial purposes. So the commissioners gave the opportunity to solicit other types of economic exchange. We received a bid for $1.1 million from the Moser Group. That's 40% higher than what we originally had invested in the property. We've since that point, done the required advertisement and upset bid process. We have not received any additional bids, and so the recommendation from staff is to approve the offer of $1.1 million. And then to further authorize staff to negotiate the final terms, closing conditions that would be needed to sell that property. And finally, for consideration is item K, which is from Human Resources. Our ordinance outlines a personnel advisory committee that has to be appointed by the board to review a variety of personnel issues that may arise to that level. Those names are in your packet for consideration. And the recommendation from staff is to appoint those members as well as those alternates that are attached. And Mr. Chairman, that concludes your consent. I'm happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Thank you. Commissioners, we've been presented the consent agenda. Is there any discussion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the consent agenda.
Have a motion. Do we have a second? Second. All in favor? Thank you very much. Thank you, Brian. And we'll move on to our regular agenda, and Carrie Melton, Assistant County Manager, is going to talk to us about broadband in Cleveland County.
Good evening, Board. I appreciate the opportunity to come before you tonight. Really, the purpose of me coming before you is to give you an update on what's happening with broadband in Cleveland County. I've heard from many of you over the last couple of months or last year or so about, citizens calling and asking about broadband. Can we expand broadband? When are we going to expand broadband? I think with the world now and the fact that lots of our citizens are working remotely, broadband has really become kind of a necessity for a lot of people. I came before you in 2016 and did an update very similar to this, so I'm going to show you kind of where we were in 2016 and where we are now. I also have with me tonight Mike Tank. Mike is with Charter Communications. Mike and I have developed a relationship over the last little bit, and Charter Communications is doing some really great things here in Cleveland County. So I'm going to give him an opportunity to talk about what they're doing, and hopefully you'll see from this presentation that although it may take a little bit of time, I think our citizens over the next 5 years or so are going to be pretty amazed at the way broadband is going to expand in Cleveland County. So one of your strategic goals under public safety is to evaluate options for expanding broadband services to areas of the county which are not served. We've worked for several years, really tried to work with a lot of local service providers, and just didn't have much luck in expanding broadband with those folks. So we've really tried to partner with Spectrum to see if potentially they are a strong financial organization that's been around for a long time. So we really want to partner with them moving forward to help provide these services to our citizens. All the information in the maps I'm going to show you over the next couple of slides are from the FCC. So this map shows where we were in 2016. The lighter the color, the less speed. So in 2016, you saw some blue areas, some a lot of green areas and then a little bit of yellow areas. In 2020, 4 years later, you can actually see a lot of much darker areas in Cleveland County. So this is kind of the progress that's been made from 2016 to 2020. But we all know there's still some work to do. So all of those areas really have a provider. It's just that they're not all kind of high-speed internet. So I'll show you in a minute some high-speed options, who has it now, and kind of where we're going moving forward. But one of the options that's out there right now, that as you get phone calls from citizens, is this satellite provider. Folks, companies like HughesNet, those are options for people where there is not high-speed internet. That's just another option you can give folks. It is, I know, not ideal, but it is an option for people until we get to the point where we run high-speed internet all throughout the county. So this really is the map that shows where there really is no high-speed internet at all in the county. And all those yellow areas are those areas where there's just no folks at all being served. The FCC actually looks at internet and data in census tracts. So if you'll see all those lines around there, those are all the census tracts in the county. One of the things that can be a little misleading is if there's one residence in the census tract that has high-speed internet, then it is colored like the whole entire census tract has it. So that can be a little misleading where it shows so much of the county has availability, but as you all know, you get calls from people that live in some of those areas that don't have it. So in a couple of minutes, when Mike comes up here, he's gonna talk about kind of the additional research they're doing to really drill down on those census tracts themselves to determine the areas that may be one of those where just a couple of people have high speed in that area and not all of them, and to really try to target those. But Charter Communications actually applied for RDOF grants, their federal funding, and received an award which will serve about 1,960 residences in Cleveland County. So as you see right now, this is the 2020. The yellow areas are all those that are currently nobody in the census tract has data, ultra high speed. And this is the areas that they were awarded the grants. So really, if you look, all of that yellow area within the next 5 years should be served by Charter Communication high-speed internet. So we're really excited for that. Like I said, Mike can talk a little bit more about that and the timeline on that, but I'm really excited to say that Cleveland County is really going to see some great strides in high-speed internet over the next couple of years. So like I talked about on those census tracts, there are areas within those census tracts that looks like there's high speed, but there maybe not. So Charter Communication right now is working on this underserved analysis data, where they're going to look at all these areas and really try to drill down on those census tracts that say there's high speed, but maybe not everybody in that census tract has it. So again, when I get through, I'm going to let Mike talk about that a little bit. And also, some of the areas we want to partner with Charter Communications is future opportunities, county-funded projects. Obviously, Charter and the county can discuss any projects the county might be interested in subsidizing to build out when he looks at some of those areas that are not currently all served. The other thing that's pretty exciting is in the state budget this year is the state GREAT grant program, growing rural economies with access to technology. So once the state budget is approved, our hope is that Charter Communications, the county, can partner together to apply for some of these grants. Those grants actually cannot be applied for by the county. Those grants would actually be applied for by the service provider, but there certainly is some relationship there. If the county was able to kind of partner with them, it would just kind of increase the chances of receiving those grants. So at this time, I'm going to ask Mike to come up for a minute. Mike, if you'll just kind of share with the board some of the other things that Charter's doing in Cleveland County.
Great, thank you. Good evening. Hi. Again, I'm Mike Tankum with Charter Communications, also known as Spectrum. Sometimes people don't quite understand the relationship. Charter is the parent company. Spectrum is the product we sell. So if you think of Procter & Gamble sells Crest toothpaste, Charter sells Spectrum products. So think of us as interchangeable that way. So we're happy to be here today. As you know, Charter and our predecessor, Time Warner Cable, have been serving the Cleveland County area, Shelby area for a long time. I've been here for about 15 years myself, so we're happy to do this. But as Carrie is talking about, we are looking to expand out into the rural unserved areas. Through the RDOF program, which stands for Rural Development and Opportunity Fund, which was an FCC program to get service out to the unserved areas. Carrie talked about that was only available or eligible areas where the census blocks that had zero participation or had zero broadband out there. According to the FCC's definition of 25 by 3, 25 megabits download and 3 megabits upload. So that's what their definition is. So we're trying to make sure that we can not only provide service to the areas in the RDOF area, but we also want to look at the other areas as well, because we know there are adjacent areas that maybe according to the FCC maps already say that it's got level of service was not eligible for RDOF, but that not all 100% of the homes in that area have it. So what we want to do is expand our broadband there. So we are looking at the service to not only the RDOF areas, but for these other areas. So what we're doing is we're looking at, we've taken the map of the county and we're doing an analysis. And so we're saying, what's our existing footprint? Where do we provide service? We eliminated that piece. We then eliminated the areas that we're going to be winning our RDOF awards, eliminated that. And so what's left is areas that have less than 25 megabits per second areas. So we have identified those areas. Now, granted, we have done that through desktop analysis, so it's to the best of our knowledge, and we need to look a little deeper with GIS. We have not done the walkout, the boots on the ground, to walk up and down every street, to count every house, but we have a pretty good idea of where those are, and we have identified almost 2,100, 2,920 some, or 2,092, so 2,100 homes in those areas is what we've identified. So these are the areas that we need to have some help to go out and do it. As we know, these rural areas, to build to them in the model that we have just is not economically feasible just to do it as our company all by ourselves. So we need some help. And so that's what RDOF did for these unserved areas. They gave us some subsidies, some funding to go out there, to go out and build that. We also need some subsidies for these other areas. And that's what could come through federal grants. We know that there's some ARPA funds out there, although I think the county has probably already identified where they're going to be using that. But one of the upcoming opportunities is going to be through the North Carolina Great Grant. And I'm sure your county attorney could probably help you direct you on some of that. But we do know that as the budget is getting finalized, that should be a part of it. So we are looking to partner with the county, because as Carrie had mentioned, that if we partner with the county, the grading and the scoring of that, we get extra bonus points for partnering with the county. So we certainly want to do that to make it as attractive as possible, to make sure we get the best possible scoring so that we can win that. Now, in doing that, we will certainly pay our fair share, but we need that little bit from the state government to help us get over that hump. So with doing that through the RDOF areas, through this other, whether it be through the Great Grant or whatever, we are looking to get to where we can provide coverage to all the areas that are currently unserved within Cleveland County. Now, in the areas that we already provide service, we already provide up to 1 gigabit worth of service up there. Our standard is 200 megabits per second, or 200 megabits per second for our normal folks. We also offer a Spectrum Internet Assist program, which is a low-cost program for families that could qualify for it. To qualify, you have to have a person in your family that's on free or reduced lunch, or a senior that's on SSI, supplemental security income type stuff. I had left with you prior to the meeting a packet that provides information about our background, a little bit of a PowerPoint that goes through most of what I've covered today, and also there is a flyer in there about the Spectrum Internet Assist program. So we are looking to work with the county, work with Carrie, work with you folks to bring broadband to the unserved areas of the county. It's a main focus for us. It's something that we are committed to do, and I think through the RDOF that we've shown across the state, across the country, we are committed to do this. So with that, I'll be happy to entertain any questions you might have.
Questions?
Just a comment, I've been impressed with your advertisements on TV. We were talking about getting it out in the counties. And I thought, that, that's a prayer that's been answered for us, because we've been looking for ways to do that ever since I've been on the board. And also how that you're trying to help, because we have so many children in our area that's got the smart tablets or whatever they call them, and they take them home and they don't have any way to do research. I know they got all the stuff downloaded, but without the research, how do you finish the project? So I don't want to push you, but get here as quick as we can.
We hear that a lot, so yes, we're working hard at doing that.
I get calls almost weekly. In fact, one this week, I talked to Danny about it at length. Lady that lives up in the Bellwood area, and the only way she can get service is to go through Hickory, and I don't pretend to know any of this, but she says it's Morganton, a linear wireless service. It's costing her under $180 a month, and she just absolutely has to have it for her children, and she is in one of these lower income houses, and hopefully, we can do something. And there was another last week, somebody that lived over at the lake, just a little space where there was about 6 houses that couldn't get service, and they were told, well, if they'd come up with $20,000, they could run the line. So I'm hoping that this federal money will take care of some of those situations. But like Ronnie said, we need it now. We need it yesterday. Yep. But now the school's getting money too, right? Maybe we could tap in that too.
But it's especially great to hear that there is a program for,
Because these kids, that's needed.
They need it
there
badly.
is a program for people that cannot afford the normal
Right.
rate. So their children or whoever can get on.
We understand that the digital divide has many aspects of it. One is whether they have service and available at their home. Second, can they afford it? And third, do they have the device and the knowledge and the education to use it? So I know that as the state is looking at this through what their efforts are, they're committed to using some funds through all the aspects of those. We know that the majority of that is intended to go for the expansion into unserved areas, but we do know that there's needs and there should be funding for those areas as well. One thing I didn't mention is the areas as we expand that we're going to build out to. You had mentioned the lady that's got a point-to-point wireless. We are building fiber to the home, so they will have a hardline direct connect that will be have up to a gig worth of service if they want to do that. Our standard service is 200 megabits per second, so they will have more than sufficient speed to do whatever their needs are. And if they have a higher need to go up to 1 gig, we'll be offering that. And then as the future grows to whatever it might be in 5-10 years from now, we will have the technology and we will have the fiber lines in place to be able to address and move forward with what the marketplace demand is. So it will be, you may hear the term future-proof. What we're building is future-proof.
Things have changed. When I got married in '77, I paid $6 a month for Shelby Cable. It went up a little since then.
Just a little, but hopefully
But now I have internet, telephone, and 300 channels.
Right, the product that goes along with it, you're
Yeah, that's
getting a
right.
lot more
That's right.
opportunities and a lot more choices.
And And I still remember when you first got on the internet and you heard it dialing, way back when, so, come a long way.
I guess I backed up because I was back there, County Council, the question I got, we showed the areas that did not have high speed.
Mhm.
And my question, and maybe Kerry might have to answer, but how many of these areas has got satellites? I mean, it's not fast, but they've got something that the school kids can work, but it's not fast enough or whatever. But I mentioned to Kerry, Russell County started putting these things out on the pole and jumping from one to another, but it's not a fast service, but it is a service.
We understand there are stopgap measures out there to get it out there quickly to address that. We do know that the pandemic really has brought out the need for education, for work from home, for telemedicine, and so there are point-to-point services such as Mr. Bridges was talking about, this lady has. Those are good short-term options. What we're talking about, what we're going to be doing, it may take us a little longer to get there, but ours is going to be the long-term, the strong option for them long-term. So I wish we could say, I wish I had that magic wand to say, yeah, we can go out and build it within the next 6 months or whatever, but there is a long process to go through that. Part of that process is the walkout to go out and do the design. I mentioned that the work that we're doing has been really by a desktop, looking at analysis that way. We need to walk out and look at every pole to see if there's room. To make room on these poles, it's called what's called make ready. We have to make sure that the pole has enough room for us to be on the pole, to be in compliance with National Electrical Safety Code, NESC, so that either there has to be, the power may have to move, may have to change out the pole because the pole has been out there for 50 years, especially in these rural areas that just can't handle any additional weight on it or whatever. So there is a lot of make-ready work. So there's a lot of preliminary work to get things done. We know that we're working with the power companies, and we're trying to get some common ground to where we can get this done as quickly as possible. So there are a lot of steps to make this work and to make it happen, but we are working strong and dedicated to get it done.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Any more questions? Thank you. Thank you for your time.
In your packet, you have my card. If you have any questions or whatever, please feel free to reach out to Carrie, to reach out to myself. We're here to work with you to make this move forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioners, I'll give you your packets at the end of the meeting.
Thank you. And now we're going to turn to
I'm just taking my stuff,
Okay.
so he has space, sorry.
the county manager, Brian Eppley, for end of the year report.
Thank you, Commissioner Bridges. This is kind of a segue. Obviously, broadband has been a major component of the Board of Commissioners' strategic plan now for many years, going back maybe as far as a decade. And so the segue here is obviously our fiscal year ended June 30th of 2021. And over the first quarter of FY22, we're working through finalization of strategic goal deliverables on the financial side, some accruals that linger in a lagging way. And I come tonight to give you some highlights of the end of the year report that was provided to each board member that obviously offers a great more level of detail. But again, my goal is to just summarize those some of those achievements in a way that gives a comprehensive highlight of the last 12 months. So I will start with just really focusing on what I consider very strategic momentum surrounding organizational development. We've been, it's really difficult to capture a lot of the projects, the initiatives, the focus that we've had at an administrative level in a 12-month measurement period, and I think it collectively requires us to look a little broader than that. Then I'll highlight some areas that I believe indicate high performance. Obviously, as we've talked many times, at a staff level, our goal is to A, define high performance, and then B, work towards measurable outcomes that support that. And then lastly, we will give a brief snapshot of what our financial year concluded. For me, jumping right in, I think that when we talk about organizational development, one of the biggest things that has been a part of our administrative plan over the last really 2.5, 3 years is defining who we are and where we're going. What I mean by that is prior to 2018, we did not have a stated organizational purpose. So although we had 28 departments that all had a high level of professionalism, the subject matter experts were really in tune with what they were doing, and we were focused on delivering that level of service. We really had an organization that had a tremendous amount of silos and lacked the ability to synchronize and collaboratively work together for one sole purpose. Through a variety of team building exercises and really intentional focus on ensuring that across the organization, no matter what department you went to, if you asked that person, what are we trying to do? What is our goal for being here? We were able to identify what may seem simple and may seem self-explanatory, but a purpose that simply states we're here to make our community better. And further from that, we were able to identify values that we use kind of as a North Star, as a compass to help us make decisions in our operations. And this has been really infused into all parts of the organization, these concepts, because we think when these values are actionable to support our purpose, that is what high performance is. And from that, we're able to go a step further, set specific goals and measurables. And so again, as I mentioned, it really takes more of a comprehensive multi-year approach versus just when you start talking about level of strategic deliverable and outcome, it's not just a 12-month snapshot. Specifically over the last 24 months, I think that it's important, at least at a staff level, it really resonates to look at it in this way, that pre-COVID, we had this exceptionally robust operational plan where we were focusing on community wellness and all the focus areas on the board strategic plan, trying to be good fiscal stewards, drafting a capital improvement plan, re-engineering strategies, and then abruptly had to enter this moment of crisis management, which was react, rebuild, rethink. We've talked about that many, many times as we entered COVID, and that required very fluid personnel policy changes, managed spend policies, a variety of things to help kind of settle the storm, stabilize, if you will. And then moving forward, as we're trying to be optimistic about what we've learned and really be intentional about reinventing ourselves and trying to be an industry leader in local government, we've entered this rethink phase, and we think that we can be a better organization moving forward than we have been in the past. Here's just a kind of an updated abbreviation of the React, Rebuild, Rethink. You'll notice this looks a little bit different than what you've seen in the past, and the concept here is we've spent the last 18 months stabilizing and normalizing our organization. That's from a policy perspective, that's from a fiscal perspective, that's from an operational perspective, really understanding and defining our role. And somewhere in the midst of that, our fiscal year ended. But I would draw your attention to the rethink phase because, again, I think that there's been just a tremendous amount of engagement and buy-in across the organization to think that we can be better through this concept of sustained innovation. Just in general, how do we think in a different way about the services that we provide that propels Cleveland County to be an industry leader? So when you put all those together and you say, what is high performance? Where has our real focus been? I break it down into these kind of 4 compartments. Number one, our organizational purpose. In the past, we were unclear, undefined, and had a siloed organization. And now we clearly know who our customer is, and we have shared buy-in as to what we're trying to accomplish. When I look at our most important asset on the balance sheet and something that's about 60% of our total budget, which is our people, historically, maybe a tad undervalued that created some level of disengagement. And now I think if you talk to our people, we have a culture that really acknowledges talent and sees that as an invested asset. Technology was historically under-prioritized. We've done a complete ERP sweep. We were working towards electronic timekeeping, and I would say that asset is improving and making us a more efficient, more high-performing organization. And then lastly, our physical infrastructure. There was a lack of attention to maintenance, and we started correcting that program all the way back in 2017, and that was most recently recognize that your capital work session back in January, but it is program progress with a very structured approach to long-term sustainability. Operational high performance, I'll touch on just some brief deliverables from the FY 2021 year that operate in this hierarchy. Number one, they're priority-based. Priority-based means that they are in some way linked to the Board of Commissioners' strategic plan. Number two, they're data-driven. We try to pride ourselves at a staff level of providing the Board of Commissioners with relevant, reliable, real-time data that we can use to make educated and informed decisions. And number three, we try to make decisions and advisements to the board that generates outcomes that are sustainable and long-term. I know that's kind of small, and I certainly am not going to read through each of them, but I tried to break it down between investment into human capital and investment into operations that really made a significant impact. And when you look back over the last 12 months and you're able to check some of these things off, it's clearly easy to see that I think that these move the needle towards high performance. They make us a different community and a different organization than we were 12 months ago. And when you're able to sustain incrementally these types of years back to back to back, it really has a transformational impact on the organization and on the community. And again, all of these are priority-based in a way that we believe achieves the Board of Commissioners' strategic plan and ultimately serves our purpose of improving our community. A couple that I would just highlight that I think are really big deals. We implemented our pay and market study back in April. It's about a $2.1 million pay and compensation study. Electronic timekeeping and several department heads that onboarded from a human capital perspective. One of the biggest and most important aspects of our operational year was the fact that we had multiple work sessions, operational, capital, and policy all in the past 12 months for the Board of Commissioners. We obviously were able to draft a collective priority-based budget with a 3.25 cent tax rate decrease. The Catawba Resort was able to open this year. All the COVID-19 management, several ordinance changes, including animal services, solid waste single hauler, and just a variety of other data-driven, programmed policy decisions that ultimately will lead to doing more with less as we move forward as a team. One other indicator here, not only do we prioritize high performance and try to define it, but we also put specific resources into measuring high performance. Here's just a quick optic of our most recent dashboard. We measure this monthly. We evaluate it twice a year and return performance to our employees. And again, I think that helps bolster not only Cleveland County as an employer of choice, but also it incentivizes our employees to understand their impact on organizational performance. And whether we're measuring investment into wellness claims, talent retention, organizational headcount as an efficiency metrics, or things that are important to us, such as wellness activities and timekeeping, because we, again, try to communicate those as cultural investments. As we make challenges and measurable deliverables, our team continues to respond, and I think that starts at the board level and works all the way through all levels of our organization. Some quick highlights from fiscal year 21 from a financial perspective. The board and I have talked about this many times, but as an organization, we want to be seen as a very lean, fiscally conservative county government that does two things, not to oversimplify, but we want to have strategies that maximize revenue opportunities. That's grants, that's federal, state drawdowns, that's working smarter, not harder. An example would be several years ago, we brought in-house EMS billing, which eliminated a $150,000 contract, and it took our collection percentage from below 50 to up above 70. And since that point, there's been several $1 million that have been capitalized on that we otherwise would have done without. Secondly, we want to be measured and outcome-based from a spend policy perspective. We don't have a use it or lose it budget practice. We do not do incremental budgeting. We start with a zero-based concept every year, and department heads know that part of their performance evaluation is how they manage their budget. It's not about a percentage that you turn in or don't turn in. There's no penalty for underspending. It's about how did you connect your budget with the service delivery demands and ultimately the Board of Commissioners' strategic plan. And those type of policies, and I think that we saw it crystal clear through our react, rebuild phases in our crisis management plan, where people really bought into that, and it helped give them clarity and guidance as to what is appropriate, what isn't appropriate from a spend policy perspective. I'll start with the revenue side. We closed our general fund June 30th, 2021, and as those kind of fourth quarter accruals came in, we had total revenue of about $127.8 million. Obviously, property tax continues to be the largest driver, as it is in all counties of North Carolina. Very proud of our tax collection team under Ms. Lavender's leadership, 98.5% collection rate this previous year. Sales tax is our second largest revenue, and then there's a variety of different less material amounts that kind of fall in to fill in the gaps. But I would point out development fees and occupancy taxes, although those aren't material to the total general fund budget, I put those up there just to indicate those are exceptionally high in a period where there was still some lingering regulatory shutdown. Development fees is primarily building inspections and planning, and I would tell you that that's about double of the average that it's been in the last 5 years. So a lot of energy in our economy. Sales tax was up across the state, certainly up here too, both from a point of sale and a per capita perspective. And occupancy tax recovered nicely from being down quite a bit in 2020. So you can see at the bottom here, I've just outlined where our tax base concluded and what the value of a penny was. So as it's been in the past, pretty consistent with our top three revenue sources being ad valorem taxes, sales tax, and restricted intergovernmental. Most of that restricted intergovernmental is health and social services in the form of federal and state grants. And then again, I pointed out that level of activity in our kind of development fee bucket, which is building and planning and rezoning and so forth. And I also like to point out the just the significant level of performance in investment income. In 2014, when I came to work at Cleveland County, that was a tick over $84,000, and we concluded at about $1.4 million this previous year. From an expense perspective, about $123.5 million. Human services, public safety, and education continue to be our largest three functions. If you polled all 100 counties in North Carolina, that's going to be very consistent, pretty similar. What I would point out here is when you look at the dollar, this optic here on the right represents what portion of every dollar we spend goes where. And so you can see 28 cents out of every dollar goes to human services, 30 cents out of every dollar goes to education, and 28 cents out of every dollar also goes to public safety. 4 or 5 years ago, that would have been 33% to human services and about 21% to public safety. So when we talk about priority-based budgeting, allocation and resource reengineering and reallocation, that's exactly what we're talking about. Without growing the entire county budget, for the first time in the history of Cleveland County, we spent more in public safety than we did on human services. And that is very strategic, multi-year, and directly tied to the Board of Commissioners' strategic plan. So I'll drill down on those a little bit further. Here's our both social services and public health expenditures year after year. And the takeaway that I would point out is on the top chart is our Medicaid enrollee. So even though Medicaid eligibility continues to expand, and we're at about 33% of our community having some level of eligibility for Medicaid, our cost for applying those services has remained relatively flat for almost a decade. Early retirement incentive, a lot of contract renegotiations, technology infusion, a lot of efficiency improvements have reduced our local cost or held that flat over a significant period of rising cost. And same is true with with the health department. And so when you add those together, you can see what I would call a very managed cost over the last almost decade in two of our largest departments. From a public safety perspective, the Sheriff's Department and the detention center add up to about $16 million. You can see intentionally since 2012, there's been pretty consistent year after year, higher level of investment into those two functions. The line that's adjoining ours is in the green there. Ours is in the blue. Our peer counties in North Carolina are the green, and you can see where we started with kind of a gap, and there's been a needed level of investment to catch to those benchmark counties. The last area in public safety is EMS. Here I've done kind of a total spend with all the counties at the bottom, and then the line there represents the per capita expenditure so that we can adjust for population. And we came in at about $85, $86 per capita to the citizens of our county to provide our pre-hospitalization emergency transport services. A couple of the reasons we've been able to manage what was I believe, a very fiscally responsible expenditure side of the budget, is this is our total spend for employees. And I would point out from 2014 to 2022, 21-22, the average employee who's remained in the same position would have received about a 25% annual wage increase, and that's because of 7 years of total stagnation, frozen pay plan. The county was falling behind. Our ability to recruit and retain talent was significantly lower than it should have been. Our employee morale was low, and so the Board of Commissioners, your top priority for 5 or 6 years has been to really pursue this concept of an employer of choice, which includes wage escalation. And although your total wages have increased, you've reduced through efficiency and technology the number of personnel required. So you're able to pay each of those people a more competitive wage without growing the number in an abnormal way. And that's really helped us manage our spend. We've also done things like very simple things like energy consumption reduction. Here's our total utility budget, again, compared to some of our peer groups, and we still got a long way to go. When you have outdated buildings and buildings that aren't modernly designed and aren't energy efficient, you can only do so much. But I'm very pleased that we've reduced our budget over the last 2 years from an energy consumption perspective by about $250,000. Literally money that we're saving by not turning the lights on, having a more efficient chiller or boiler or whatever. And lastly, here from a financial perspective, I would remind you that your debt portfolio is exceptionally heavy. You have a top 15 bond rating in the state of North Carolina, updated as recently as 2016, and your 10-year payout, this is an indication of your total debt balance, but your 10-year payout's well over 90%, and both Moody's and S&P continue to give this board, from a fiscal perspective, rave reviews about financial position. Lastly, when you maximize revenue, when you manage debt, when you really are designed and programmed about your expenditure policy, what that does is add to your fund balance, your equity account. We closed the year at 19.3%, up from 18.28. And so you can see, we don't yet have final numbers for some of our peers, but assuming that they hold the line fairly consistently with where they were at this time last year, we expect to surpass that group at the end of the fiscal year. Lastly, the last slide that I have here is just a quick update on the American Recovery Plan grant dollars. As you're all aware, the federal administration allocated approximately $19 million to Cleveland County. It is not general fund money. It is very program specific. The Treasury has issued guidance. It's about 300 pages as far as allowable cost and monitoring. We have to submit a plan to the federal government in January and then do quarterly reports for the entire amount to be allocated in a compliant way by 12/31/24. We have drafted a plan that allocates about $6.5 million per year between now and then, specifically through 3 sections of the Code of Federal Regulations that deal with personnel, EMS equipment, and employee incentives. We have shared this with the North Carolina Pandemic Recovery Office as well as our local CPA auditors, who have both given us a preliminary sign-off on the appropriateness, and we're very, very pleased. Actually commented that we were fairly advanced in our position as far as drafting the plan in a compliant way. And so I present that to the board in your end of the year report for review and consideration. Mr. Chairman, that concludes the summary of your report, and I'm happy to answer any questions that the commissioners may have.
Any comments or questions for Mr. Epping?
I would like to say we appreciate you and your team, because it has been a very trying year and a hard year. We did real well.
Yes, sir.
We appreciate you and your team.
So,
Anybody else? I would echo that. The leadership of our management team goes all the way through the organization, and focus on performance and high efficiency shows, and we appreciate it.
yes, sir.
Okay, down to commissioners' reports. Anybody got anything they'd like to report or say?
Good job, Scott. Take care of our knees.
Thanks, Scott. I would like to Mitch and Betsy, would you like to say anything about the weddings you had you don't? Okay, well, I'll just say they made it possible for, we had some weddings on a Saturday and had 15 couples? 14 couples came, and we appreciate her working on the day off and bringing a magistrate in and help some people get married that maybe wouldn't have had time otherwise. And they're planning to do it again about Valentine's Day. So if anybody is not married, you know, she can help you out there. I also, a lot of you knew David Lattimore, local pastor that passed away yesterday, and he was past mayor of Kingstown. He was a substitute teacher at Burns, a bus driver. He was well loved by everybody. He's going to be missed. So if you'd think to remember his family in thought and prayer. Any of the staff have anything they'd like to talk about?
If I may, just a
Thank you.
brief update. I think it's positive information on COVID. If you recall, several meetings ago, we were reporting that we were at 18, 19% positivity, 100 new cases a day, hospital overran, and pleased to report that all of that is trending in a much more positive direction. We're up about 56% of eligible vaccinations, people 12 and over. Our case count's down to about 33 new ones a day, so literally 60% decrease. Our positivity rate's about 10%, still slightly higher than the state average, but significantly better than it was just a few weeks ago. Our hospital's in a much better spot. Our EMS and emergency response folks are in a much better spot. So, from my perspective, something to be very, very pleased with.
Thanks for that great report. Now, if there's nothing else, the next meeting of the Cleveland County Board of Commissioners will be on Tuesday, November 2nd at 6 p.m. in the Commissioners' Chamber, and I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second, all in favor?